Hey, what's up guys, it's Marf, and I realized I didn't make a video for the 10th anniversary of Real Racing 3. Now, if you didn't know, I actually have played this game since its launch. I've been on or off. It's not necessarily my cup of tea, and I know for some of you guys as well, it isn't, just because it is more realistic focused, but I definitely enjoy getting that realistic simcade type of racing experience fix every once in a while. And Real Racing 3 has been my go-to for a long time besides GT Racing as well. So I wanted to make this video to not only commemorate the 10th anniversary of Real Racing 3, but go ahead and take a look at some of the awesome things that it has done for the mobile racing genre and some of the ground it broke in features, the ecosystem, and of course the absolute plethora of content that this game has to offer. So first I want to talk about game economy and ecosystem. This was one of the first AAA racing games that was completely free to play. If you didn't know, Real Racing 1 and 2 were paid experiences, whereas this was obviously free, I believe, from the get-go. And this preceded Asphalt 8, which is very interesting because Asphalt 8 is obviously one of the most famous examples of a free-to-play mobile racing game, but Real Racing 3 kind of did it first. Now, of course, there are pros and cons to this system. The big pro is obviously this game has lasted for 10 years, most likely because it's so accessible and it's free to play. However, of course, the cons to that are, of course, the energy system, the wait times for upgrades. Sometimes it's really difficult to get new cars, but what it did do is break ground for how mobile racing games can do their game economies and ecosystems. Of course, other games, especially in the Asphalt franchise, would adopt some of these features, and so Real Racing 3 became a real blueprint for other racing games in mobile gaming. Again, the energy system is something that nobody likes. However, I will say the fact that they did a per car system rather than an overarching energy system is definitely nice, and I obviously prefer those instead of just having 10 races at one time. Instead, each car has its own energy system so that you can keep playing as long as you have multiple cars. Now, the other huge thing this game got right when it came out was the immersive experience. This was one of the first racing games that had a fully HD cockpit camera, which I absolutely love. Obviously, by today's standards, it isn't the most detailed, but for 2013, it was phenomenal, and it still holds up relatively well considering the fact that it is a mobile game and it can run on a lot of devices considering how old the game is as well. So not only do the interiors of the cars look excellent, obviously by 2013 standards, but that also goes for the tracks and the exteriors of the cars as well. Again, compared to a game coming out in this year, obviously there are flaws, but considering this is a decade-old game, honestly, it doesn't hold up that bad. I feel like if this game just added a couple of more post-processing effects like different lens flares or different animations, things like that, this game would look really modern. Now, of course, we do know that there is a new Real Racing game coming up soon called Real Racing Next, and I'm sure that will blow this game out of the water in terms of graphical fidelity, but nonetheless, I think it's really interesting to go back and just see how awesome this game held up compared to modern racing game standards. Now, in my opinion, the audio department isn't really that great. That's not to say the engine sounds weren't good. I think the engine sounds were some of the best in any racing game. However, I will say that the music department definitely fell flat for me, especially during the races themselves. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the tracks. Like I said previously, the graphical fidelity of the tracks was really good and impressive considering that it was released in 2013, but by the time this game was 10 years old, we got so many tracks. I think in terms of just raw content alone, counting things like tracks and cars, if I am not mistaken, this should be the most feature content-packed racing game ever released on mobile. I cannot think of a single other AAA racing game that has more cars or tracks in one game. This is really incredible. Although what I do find really hilarious is that there is no Nürburgring Nordschleife. I'm not sure if that's just a legal issue, but obviously we have the Nürburgring, but I'm not sure why there hasn't been a Nordschleife yet, especially the fact that this game is 10 years old. But either way, Obviously, the amount of content in this game is insane, and I think that's one of the most impressive parts about this game, especially if you're a new player. You can just keep going and going and going and going, and you will never really reach the end of what this game has to offer. Now, forgive me if I am missing this just a bit, but if I remember correctly, there was not live multiplayer for a really long time. Back in my old days, when this game first released in 2013, the multiplayer was against ghosts of other players. Now, I'm not sure when they added real-time multiplayer, but that is such a huge thing, especially for a game like Real Racing 3, especially because sometimes playing by yourself can get a bit stale in simulation games where you know you're just playing against bots. Sometimes the stakes just aren't enough for you to feel really immersed, so I really appreciate the fact that eventually they did add real-time multiplayer, and it works pretty darn well. I'm really happy that they have that track rotation thing going on. The only problem I have is that you have a very limited selection of cars each time there is a new multiplayer session. Now, luckily, if you don't have one of the cars, they give you a free car, but in that case, since you don't have it upgraded, I believe you get demolished by a lot of the other players who have that car upgraded, which is one of the most disappointing parts about multiplayer. I really wish you could choose a different class of car or something like that, or just use your own garage whenever you wanted. That would be nice, but I don't know if there's like the player base for that. However, all in all, I'm glad that they have real-time multiplayer, and it does work pretty well. What's really nice about this game, however, is it's a really awesome game for not only casual fans, but very hardcore fans as well. Now, obviously, in terms of sim or simcade games, I'm definitely on that casual side. And what I really love about this game is that I can hop on really quickly, get into a race, and just kind of chill. There's no huge amount of pressure or anything like that. And if you want that pressure, of course, you can go to the time limited events and the leaderboards and try to get as fast of a time as possible. But what I really love about this game is when you get into a longer endurance race or something like that, where you're on an open track and you just hear some of the ambient music and your car's engine, it actually is quite relaxing and a really nice immersive experience as well. And that's something I'm definitely going to miss about this game compared to other games, more recent games like Asphalt 9. And I haven't played the new Real Racing game, although I know there were a couple of betas. I'm definitely going to try out that game as soon as I can and give you guys my thoughts on it. But I feel like that game isn't going to capture that ambient, atmospheric type of vibe that Real Racing 3 gave off, and it's really hard to get that, to nail that down. I don't know if this is something that only I experienced, but it's sort of akin to the same experience of single player in Minecraft or something like that, where you can just be in this sort of open world, even though obviously it's a close track, but you feel very serene, you feel at home when you're just driving around on the track by yourself, or of course against AI opponents. And like I said, that lack of pressure is really nice, especially in a simulation focused game where it can be more difficult for new players to get into it. Of course, the assists in this game are pretty darn good. And what's nice about this game is that the handling feels really nice for mobile. It's really easy to tell when your car loses traction. I know I went a long time without talking about this game's handling, but there's really not much to say. It's really good for a mobile sim game. It's really easy to tell when your car loses traction, and overall it does a good job of assisting new players, yet having a really high skill ceiling. So overall, Real Racing 3 is probably one of the best racing games ever released on mobile, and I am super excited for what's next. Well, actually, it is going to be Real Racing next, but I am definitely sad to see this game sort of starting to come to a close. Obviously, it doesn't feel like it's going to end anytime very soon, and of course, I'm still playing this game, but I've really enjoyed taking a look back at Real Racing 3 and enjoying the more serene environments and just the awesome racing experience that it is. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this Real Racing 10th anniversary video, and I will see you guys later.